In life, there are two things you cannot choose, or two sets of people that you cannot choose. One, your parents. Second, your boss. The reality is that you and me are going to end up spending a majority of our 24 hours at work. And there's a good probability you may not end up with what you call as an ideal supervisor. Most people give up on a potentially great career option not because of the brand of the organization or the product or even compensation. But research tells us that most people quit because of an unreasonable supervisor or a tough boss. So how does one cope with a difficult supervisor? Well, here are a few things that you could do. Number one, don't allow your situation to affect you personally. You got to differentiate between the situation and your own confidence levels. Easier said than done, right? But that's truly what you need to do. The moment you start to personalize the issue, the moment you start to think there's something wrong with you, well, you know what's going to happen? It's going to affect you emotionally. Treat the situation just as a part of your life and not as your entire life. You got to realize that when you look at yourself in the mirror, that you believe there's nothing wrong with you. And probably somebody else needs to fix the problem with the perception. But you need to be confident about your own ability and your own, and that will help you to really give out your best. Number two, remember, personal excellence is the antidote for irrationality that comes your way. I want to say that again. Personal excellence is the antidote for the irrationality that comes your way by a difficult supervisor. The quality of your work is your best defense. And often when you're facing a difficult supervisor, we get so demotivated, don't we? And then we defocus on work. Well, that's just like pouring fuel to a fire that's already burning. On the other hand, if you choose to respond by the quality of the work that you do, very often that diffuses any fire that is there. Number three is call it out. Discuss the issue with your supervisor. Have a conversation. And let this be a conversation and not a shouting match. Ensure that the conversation is productive. Ensure the conversation is held in a healthy manner. I would suggest that you even prepare and practice for this conversation before you actually get into that conversation. I've had these conversations. I've made notes before I've gone into this conversation. And I've found that to be very helpful. The discussion shouldn't be about a me versus you and who's right and who's wrong. That's the wrong conversation to do. But it's a conversation where you inquire from your supervisor as to what could you do better in order to meet the expectations of your supervisor. It also is an opportunity for you to inform your supervisor of how his or her behavior could either help or hinder your progress. Now, two things can happen from this conversation. One, your supervisor may actually listen to the feedback he or she gets and actually changes. And that's great if that happens. But the worst thing that can happen from this conversation is that you've registered what's going on in your mind. You've registered the challenges that you're facing. And I think that's an equally important step to actually make. So you lose nothing from that conversation. In fact, you stand to gain. The next thing that you should do is set clear boundaries. Any kind of abuse, be it mental, be it emotional or physical, is a clear no-no. If the line has been crossed, make sure to report it. Very often I've seen people who've normally just kept abuse to themselves. And I'm being very clear, I'm talking about a physical or a mental or even an emotional abuse. All the three in my mind are pretty damaging. Please talk to somebody responsible in your organization because you need to ensure that it is reported. Finally, have someone to talk to. Bottling up your emotions will not help you. In fact, it will make you worse. It will cause you to imagine things. But having somebody who's neutral, whom you can open up and share your feelings and share your fears and share your frustrations and share whatever that's going on in your mind is very useful. Now this person needs to be neutral. And I think the key word is neutral. Because you don't want to form a pity party group. right? That will do more damage to you. Find somebody who's neutral. Find somebody who can listen to you without having any perception or biases in the whole scenario. And every time you open up and share, you find a sense of release. Finally, in conclusion, remember that it is normal for the majority of us to go through a season with a difficult or an unreasonable supervisor. This season will pass. You will survive. Choose to respond and not react. And finally, remember the lessons that you learned during this tough season are valuable lessons that will be very useful for you in your own personal leadership armory. Thank you for watching Leadership Vocabulary. I would encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You'll find content on faith and leadership. And if you found this video useful, feel free to share it.